Let's suppose we need to factor this quadratic expression. This is 3x squared plus 5x minus 8. And we need to show this in factored form. So the first thing that I generally do is I set up an X puzzle. And in the top, we're going to put the product of A and C. And then down here, we will put the coefficient on the B term, which is B. So let me make sure we understand what these are. So this is A, this is B, and this is C. So what is 3 times negative 8? That is negative 24. And we'll put 5 down here because that's the B term. So as we do when we are factoring quadratic expressions where the A term is 1, we need to come up with two numbers. One will go here and one will go here. And these two numbers, when multiplied together, will make negative 24. So we're going to be multiplying these two numbers here. And then here we will be adding the two numbers, and that will yield 5. So let's think about that a minute. So what are the factors of negative 24? Well, we have 1 and 24. We have 2 and 12. And we have 3 and 8. And we have 4 and 6. So which of those, and because 24 is negative, that means one of these numbers will be negative and the other will be positive. And the difference between them is going to be positive 5. And so we know that the larger of the two numbers will be positive and the smaller will be negative. And the two numbers that fit that criteria are 8 and 3. So 8 will be the positive number and 3 will be negative. So when you start with 8 and subtract 3, you'll get positive 5. Or as I like to say, when you combine 8 and negative 3, you get 5. So then what do you do with that? Well, you rewrite the expression to look like this. 3x squared, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of explode this middle term. So we're going to say 8x minus 3x minus 8. And the reason that I do that is because now we can load up, we can set up a area model for multiplication. And you'll see in a minute we're going to use that and we're going to figure out the GCF, and that's going to give us the answer. That's going to give us the two linear factors for this quadratic expression. So what we do now with these four terms, we're going to put these four terms in the box. Now, the x squared term always goes in the upper left box. And the constant term will always go in this box. And then the other two can go in either box. The x terms can go in either box. It does not matter. So, now what do we do? Well, we're going to figure out the greatest common factor for each row and column, and that will give us the answer to this. And I'll show you. So what we'll do is we will come up with the GCF for negative 3x and negative 8. Negative 3 is prime, negative 8 is not a multiple of 3. There's not an x term in both of them. So the answer to this is negative 1. -1 is the common factor for those two. And then here, well, what do we have here? We have the same coefficient situation, except they're not negative, but we do have an x term, or we have an x in each term. So x is the common factor for that row. Now let's go this direction and come up with the GCF there. Well, the GCF there is going to be 8 because it will not be negative, because if we multiplied the 8 times the -1, we would get, if we multiplied -8 times -1, we would get a positive 8 down there, and it's negative. So that needs to be positive. And then what about 3x squared and -3x? Well, that's going to be 3x. That is the greatest common factor for those two. So now that's the answer. So we take those, so we'll take this here, and I'll put that, because that's a smaller factor, I'll put that over here, x minus 1. And then this is the other factor, 3x plus 8. And so that is the factored form of this quadratic expression.